Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. So today is going to be part 2 of sharing my favorite looks that I have created with all of my palettes. So if you missed part 1, I did post that on Tuesday, so just a few days ago. If you want to go check that out, I will have that linked for you. So basically I am just running through each of the palettes in my collection and sharing my favorite look that I have created with that palette for either Instagram or YouTube. That is usually when I take the looks of my palettes, so that is kind of what I'm basing it off of. So gonna try and keep this intro super short because I have the second half of my palettes to go through with you all today. But I'm super excited, so if you want to see my favorite looks from the second half of my palettes, keep on watching. So up first is going to be my I Heart Revolution Sleeping Beauty palette, and I had a couple ideas for which one was my favorite from this palette, but I ultimately ended up going with this one. I just thought this one was super cute. I loved the little pop of the minty green shade in the inner corner, and mixing that with the more pink tone shades in this palette was super cute. This is a palette that isn't my absolute favorite. The quality of it is a little hit or miss. That is the case with most of these I Heart Revolution Princess palettes, so I'm definitely used to it and I'm definitely okay with it, but it just means that some of the looks aren't the best quality. But this one is fun to play around with. There is quite a bit of variety within this palette, which makes it exciting, a little bit overwhelming at times, but I do really enjoy the looks that I create with this palette. Next up we have my I Heart Revolution Snow White palette, and this is my favorite look with this one, and it might surprise some of you since I typically go for my more colorful looks in this video, but I loved this more neutral look that I did with this palette, and I have created a few colorful looks that I really enjoy with this palette as well, but this neutral one just has my heart. This was one of my first uses of the prints right here, and that is just a gorgeous kind of pinky tone brown transition shade, and I absolutely fell in love with that shade. I put diamonds and rubies on most of the lid, and that shade is gorgeous as well. So this one just kind of had me falling in love with some of the neutral shades within this palette, and that is definitely why this one is a favorite. Next up we have my IBY Wonderland palette, and here is my favorite look with this one. This one was a lot of fun to create, and it got some use out of these two shades right here, which are super fun to play around with. While this does look like a fairly neutral palette, it does have a few fun pops of color, and I really enjoy using those more blue toned colors in this palette, and it was just a really pretty look, super fun to create. One of the first ones that I created with this palette, in fact, and yeah, I really love this palette, especially for the everyday neutral shades in here, but it is also fun to just kind of play around with and reach into the couple fun pops of color. Next up from IBY Beauty, we have their Boho palette, and this is my favorite look with this one. I just had so much fun creating this look. If I am remembering correctly, this was a St. Patrick's Day look for me, I think a couple years ago, and I just thought it was super fun. I have struggled a little bit with this palette creating looks, especially since I feel like the matte shades don't really go with the shimmers, but I really liked this little color combo of the yellow matte here and then these greeny blue shimmer shades. I just thought this one was super cute, allowed me to reach for a few of the shades, and I really love these two especially, so any look I do with those I automatically love. So yeah, this one was super fun and super cute. Alright, next up we have my Sigma Enchanted palette, and there were a couple good options for this one, but I ultimately ended up choosing this one as my favorite, and I just really like the color combo. the greens and pinky purple shades in here are definitely a go-to color combo for me, and I just really liked the look and shape of this look. I am a huge fan of winged liner. I mentioned this in my last video as well, but I just feel like winged liner or winged looks look really good on my eyes personally, so a lot of my favorites definitely have that in common. And yeah, just from the shape to the color combo, this one was super fun. I love this palette, especially more for the springtime, and I feel like this is just the perfect color story for that season. Alright, next up we have my Sigma Untamed palette, and this is my favorite look from this palette. So this one definitely got me a little bit out of my comfort zone here. I used this bright blue shimmer shade in the inner and outer portions of my eye, and that is not a shade I'm reaching for on a daily basis. That one just intimidates me so much, but for these fun looks that I do for social media, that one is perfect. And then I put Fierce in the center of the lid, and that is just a really beautiful shade as well. So it got some good use out of the kind of more colorful shades in this palette, which was super fun. And yeah, this is not a favorite palette of mine, but I do really enjoy this look I created, and I enjoy quite a few of the looks that I've created with this palette. It's just not one I am reaching for a ton. Alright, next up we have my Sigma Cinderella palette, and this one was one of the easiest choices I have made in this video. So this is my favorite look from this palette, and I knew immediately when I went to choose my look for this palette which one it was going to be. I do want to recreate this look because I feel like it's not the best. I feel like I could do it better now, but I absolutely loved the color combo of this. I used I think it was the blue shades in here for the outer corner, and then the orangey neutral shades for the inner portion of my eye. And yeah, I just really loved how this look came out, and I definitely want to play around more with this color combo. I said it in my last video, blue and orange is a favorite color combo for me, especially in the summer, and it is one that I just have so much fun playing around with, and I genuinely loved how this look came out. Alright, next we have my ABH Subculture palette, and this one was actually a little tricky for me to decide which look was my favorite. I was between a couple, but I ultimately ended up going with this one. I just really liked the color combo of this one, and I used electric all over the center of the lid, and that is just a gorgeous, gorgeous shade. When I first got this palette, I wasn't really reaching for that shade. I just kind of was neglecting it, but once I started using it, I absolutely fell in love. I think it's beautiful, and I liked the combination of the more yellow tone shades with the purple outer corner. This was a fun kind of two-tone halo eye look, and I just really love how it turned out. Alright, next up we have my Hot Topic Winnie the Pooh Christmas palette. So for this one, honestly, I only had 2 looks to choose from, but I will pop up a picture of the one that I did choose as my favorite. I just thought this one turned out a lot better, so I focused on some of the more pinky toned shades within this palette, probably like these ones right here, and just created a nice little halo eye. This is not really a palette I am reaching for a ton. The quality of this one isn't as good as I would like it to be, but there are still a couple fun shades in here that I do enjoy, and it is one that I do want to pull out more, so hopefully soon I will be able to expand on the 2 looks that I have only created for this palette. Alright, then next we have another Hot Topic palette. This is their Pokemon palette, and here is my favorite look with this one. I absolutely adored how this look came out. I got inspired from a look I saw on Pinterest and definitely wanted to recreate it with this palette, and I'm obsessed with how it came out. I have created only a few looks with this palette, but each of the looks I create I do really enjoy, but it's still not a palette I am reaching for a ton. Hopefully this summer I can get myself to reach for it a little bit more. Like I have mentioned before, blue and orange is a favorite color combo of mine for summer, and this palette obviously has that, so hopefully I can get some good use on it this summer coming up. Next up we have my BH Cosmetics Miss Claus So Spoiled palette, and here is my favorite look with this one. I really like the combo of the more neutral shades and then adding in the pop of dark blue in the outer corner. I mixed this one with kind of this row right here, and I think it turned out super pretty. And this All Night shade is one of my favorite blues in my collection. I think it is just so pretty, and it works really well for deepening up a look, and it's not just a classic brown deepening shade. I think it adds a little bit more interest with it being a blue shade, so definitely love that shade, love this palette, love the looks I've created with it. I just really like this palette. I'm so sad that it is not available anymore, but this is definitely a top palette for me. Alright, next up we have my I Heart Revolution Mulan palette, and here is my favorite look I have created with this one. I just really liked the color combo of this one with the bluey turquoisey shade in the inner portion and the purples in the outer portion. I sometimes struggle with looks to create with this palette. I feel like the color story isn't the most cohesive. The colors are a little all over the place, so just looking into this palette, it overwhelms me a little bit, but I have created quite a few looks that I really do love with this palette, so it is probably on the least favorite end of my collection, but I have created some really pretty looks, and this one that you see here is definitely my favorite. Alright, next up we have my Nabla Dreamy palette, and this is another one I don't have a ton of looks created for social media with. I use this one more for every day, but I do have one look I want to share with you. So this was just a little bit of a fun shape. As you have probably noticed with quite a few of my looks, I really like to do the fun liner that goes across the upper lash line and up into the crease. I just think that looks really fun and adds a little bit more interest to a look. So this one was definitely super fun to create. This is a palette I know I need to reach for more often, so hopefully I can start doing that in the near future. Next up we have my Nabla Secret palette, and this one had quite a few good looks to choose from, so it was a little bit of a hard choice, but this is the one I ended up going with. This is, I believe, my most recent look with this palette, and I just really loved how it turned out. I think the pink lid was super fun, and then that blue on the lower lash line just kind of blended in nicely, and I just thought this created a really pretty look. This is such a fun palette to play around with. Like I said, I had quite a few fun looks to choose from, and it definitely made my choice difficult. But yeah, I really do enjoy this palette, and I feel like there is quite a bit of variety in it, which I do love. Next up we have my Nabla Poison Garden palette, and here is my favorite look from this one. This look was so much fun to create. I think I got inspired by a look I saw on Pinterest possibly, and I just fell in love. I loved the blend between the kind of more purple matte shades in the wing, and then I used the shade Adoration here all over the upper half of the lid, and yeah, I just thought this look turned out super cool. Easily a favorite of mine. I do have a couple other looks that I've created with this palette that I really do enjoy, but this one is easily my favorite. So very much love this look and love this palette. Next up we have my I Heart Revolution Oh the Places You'll Go palette, and if you have heard me talk about this palette, you know it is absolutely one of my favorites. I think this palette is just so cute, and just I absolutely love it. So here is my favorite look that I've created with this one. It's really giving me some cotton candy vibes and I absolutely adore it. I think this was one of the first looks that I created with this palette and to this day continues to be a favorite. This is one of the first times I used this pink shimmer shade and I did not think I was going to be as big a fan of that shade as I am. I think that might be my favorite shade in this palette. It is just so pretty. In the pan, it just looks kind of like a bright pink, but once you get it on your eyes, you kind of have a little bit of a lighter reflect on it, and it is just so, so pretty. So yeah, I love this palette. I could probably continue to go on and on about it, but we can move to the next one. So next we have a quad from Beautiful Shellz Cosmetics, and I do just want to quickly mention I do have an affiliate link with Beautiful Shellz as well as a discount code that will save you 10%. If you are interested, that is always linked in my description box. If there's anything from this company that you would like to check out, I would appreciate it. I do make a small commission if you use it, but absolutely no pressure. So this is their Iris Chameleon Quad. I believe this one is discontinued as of right now. I will pop up a picture of my favorite look I've created with this one though. I feel like I've created, even though there's 4 shades in this palette, quite a bit of variety of looks. And this one is definitely one of my tops. I kind of like the simplicity of it. I used this shade in the outer corner, put this one all over the lid, and then used this darker shimmer as my winged liner, and I just really enjoyed how this one turned out. Not super elaborate or anything, but I do think this one's super cute. Next up we have the Peach Chameleon Quad from Beautiful Shellz, and this one is still available, or at least it was last I saw, and I would highly recommend this one, even if it's just for this shade right here. That one is beautiful. So I will insert a picture of the look that I created with this palette, or my favorite look I created with this palette. I just absolutely love this palette. This one I feel like doesn't have as much variety in it as the Iris one does, but this one has this shade and I am telling you that shade is gorgeous. You can see it all over the lid in this look. Honestly, one of my favorite shades in my entire collection. I just think it is so pretty. Next up we have my ColourPop Sweet as Can Be palette. This one is absolutely adorable, and I will insert the look that is my favorite. So this is the most recent look I created with this palette, and it knocked out my previous favorite look for the top spot. I just love how this one came out, so I put Honey Tree all over my lid and then used, I think it was Best Friends as my wing liner, and then In My Tumbly on the lower lash line, and probably blended it out with that one as well. I just really loved the color combo of the more pinky purple shades with the greens. I feel like I've done that color combo for a few of my favorite looks, and I just seriously think it is one of my favorites, and I just really love how this look came out. Alright, next we have my I Heart Revolution Tangled palette, and here is my favorite look from this one. So this was a super fun, another heavily green look, but I combined this one with purple. This crown shade is one of my favorites in this entire palette, so it was super fun to reach for that in conjunction with the green shades, and the shape of this look is super fun as well. I have had quite a bit of fun playing around with this palette. It's one of my favorites from the I Heart Revolution Princess collection. So this is definitely a fun one. Has a lot of really fun, bright colors. So this one is definitely one I enjoy reaching for. Next we have my I Heart Revolution Moana palette, and I struggle a little bit with this palette. I absolutely love the color story, but the quality of it is not the best, even compared to the other palettes in this collection. But I will show you my favorite look from this palette, and I can tell you the main reason this one is my favorite is because I focused a lot on the shade Coconut, which is one of my favorite shades from this palette, if not my favorite. I just really love the tone of that color, and it is what I used through the crease for this look. I feel like I have really good intentions when I go to create a look with this palette, but it doesn't always turn out as well as I would hope, and that definitely has to do with the formula, the quality of it. It's not a huge deal. I have definitely still been able to create some nice looks with this palette, but I do wish it was a little better quality, but I still love this whole princess collection and love the color story of this palette. Next up we have my Nomad Province palette, and this is easily one of my favorite Nomad palettes. It is either number 1 or number 2. Very, very high up there for me. I just really love this color story, and I think their formula is great as well. So I will show you the picture of my favorite look. I just really like the combo of the kind of warmer pinks in the inner portion and then the cooler toned blue shades. I believe I used these two in the outer portion. I just think it is super pretty. And I also wanted to share a couple honorable mentions with this palette as well. I've just created so many looks that I really do enjoy with this palette, and I feel like there is a ton of variety, so I just wanted to show a couple more looks and ideas that I have created with this palette and absolutely love. Alright, next we have my Delancey Panda palette. So this is obviously a very monochromatic grayscale palette. It's not one I reach for a ton, but here is my favorite look with this one. I really loved how this one came out. It is a super pretty halo eye, and I think one of the main reasons I like it is because of how much space the white took up with this look. I feel like it didn't really get overpowered with the dark black and gray shades. I think it still has a nice fun contrast between the black and the white, so definitely really enjoyed this look. Not a palette I reach for a ton, but I knew that when I bought it that it wasn't going to be an everyday palette for me, but this definitely fills a hole in my collection. I felt like I was missing some really nice gray shades, so definitely still really happy to have this one in my collection. Next up we have my I Heart Revolution Tweety palette. I am a huge fan of Tweety, so when I saw that they came out with this palette, I knew I had to pick it up. So here is my favorite look with this one. So this one has some really fun pinks to play around with, and then I chose this look specifically because I thought the pop of yellow in the inner corner was super fun, and I do really enjoy a matte pastel pop of color. This isn't a super pastel shade, but on the whole, when I'm creating looks, it is fun to add in color in the inner corner. So this one was a lot of fun to create. One of my first looks that I created with this palette. This isn't one that I reach for a ton, but when I do, I really do enjoy the looks I create. Alright, next up is my Kylove Rococo palette. And here is my favorite look with this one. I feel like I had a harder time choosing this look as well. This palette just has such a pretty color story and a very inspiring color story to me, so I have created quite a few looks that I really do enjoy with this palette, but I really love how this one came out. I loved the color combo and the sharp wing across the lower lash line. I just thought this one was super pretty, but like I said, you can do a lot with this palette, and I feel like that is super fun. Alright, then my other Kylove palette is the Triumph of Venus palette. I really like the color combo in this one with the blues and then the warmer tone shades. I think it is super fun. So here is a picture of my favorite look with this palette, and definitely focused on the blue shades. I think those are kind of the star of the show for me in this palette. So this was a super fun halo eye, and I really enjoyed how this look came out. I have created a couple looks with this palette that have not turned out the best, and I feel like I go back and forth with this palette on whether I like it or not, because I'll create looks that just don't really turn out that good, and then I'll create looks like this one that I really enjoy. So it's one I know I need to keep using and testing out, and probably going to focus a lot on the blue shades in here just because I do really love how those look. Alright, next up we have my ColourPop Back to Hogwarts palette, and here is my favorite look with this one. I believe this one was from my first impressions. I was doing a look inspired by each of the houses, and this was my Ravenclaw look, and I really enjoyed how this one came out. I was going back and forth between this one and another look that I created with this palette, but ultimately I ended up choosing this one. I just think the color combo was super nice. I think the touch of glitter was fun, and yeah, I just really enjoyed how this one came out. I've created quite a few looks that I do enjoy with this palette. You definitely get some good variety in here, and I am a huge Harry Potter fan, so this is always a fun one for me to reach for. Next up we have my Pacifica Purple Nudes palette, and here is my favorite look with this one. This was also my first impressions look, I believe, and I just absolutely love how this one came out. I think the cut crease is super fun. The blend is super nice. I seriously love this palette. I feel like I have mentioned before, I am not a monochromatic palette person, but this one I will definitely make an exception for. I think it is just so pretty, and it's not completely monochromatic. It has a couple other colors in here, but for the most part, the focus is on the purples, but these are just super wearable purples for me, and I absolutely love this palette. I think it is so good, a really nice drugstore option. Next up we have my Nomad Royal Europe palette. This palette does intimidate me a little, especially for an everyday look, but for my Instagram and YouTube, this one is super fun to create looks with. So here's a picture of my favorite look I've created with this palette. I was able to focus more on the greeny shades in here, and I feel like the shades don't look super green in the palette. I used this row right here, I believe, and probably combined it with the yellow shade to make more of a true green. And yeah, just really enjoyed how this came out, but I have created quite a few looks with this palette, and each one just looks so good. And yeah, a lot of good things to say about this palette. Not a super everyday one for me, but one I love to have fun with. Next up we have my Nomad Okavango Safari palette, and here is my favorite look with this one. I just really liked this color combo of the green shades with the more warm tone neutrals, little bit of orange in there. I just thought this look was super fun. I do also want to insert a picture of an honorable mention. Both halo eyes, interestingly enough, but I think they're both just super pretty, and if you know me, I have recently been getting into green eyeshadow lately, and I think it is super fun to play around with, especially when I do have the neutrals to mix in as well. And yeah, this palette definitely gives that to me, which is super fun. Alright, next we have my Rude Cosmetics Roaring Twenties Excessive palette, and here is my favorite look with this one. I just thought it was super fun, kind of a reverse smoky eye look, and showed off some of the more neutral shades in here. I think this one is really pretty, a really nice everyday palette. I feel like when I first got it, it wasn't my absolute favorite, but it has definitely grown on me, and I do really like the color story. Super easy for me to use, and you still can go a little bit more dramatic with this, or you can stick with your neutrals, which I do really enjoy. Alright, we are nearing the end of my palettes. So this one is my Nomad Ghost Town USA palette. Such a pretty color story. I really like the more cool tone shades in here. So here's a picture of my favorite look from this palette. This was my Halloween inspired look and I really enjoyed how it came out. I was between a couple different looks for my favorite with this one, but ultimately I ended up going with this Halloween one because I just thought it was super fun and it turned out really nice. There are definitely a lot of shades in here that I really enjoy using. I feel like I mention this every single time I talk about this palette, but this shade right here is one of my favorite lid shades. I think it is absolutely gorgeous. It is not in this look, but I do just want to mention that every single time I pull this palette out because it is gorgeous. But yeah, love this palette and love this brand. Alright, next up we have my Rude Cosmetics Roaring Twenties Indulgence palette, and this one is definitely more on the neutral side. So I will insert a picture of my favorite look with this palette. This one is definitely more on the dramatic side with that smoky wing liner, but I really do like this one. I feel like I have created quite a few looks with this palette, but they're all more everyday neutral looks, so it was a little bit difficult for me to choose a favorite look with this palette, but I feel like this one, since it is a little bit more on the dramatic side, was definitely a top choice for me. And then our final palette to talk about today is my NYX Flamingo Frost palette. This was their last Christmas release, and I think it is just absolutely adorable. So I will insert the picture of my favorite look. This was one of two looks that I did for my first impressions video and is one of two looks that I have created for my Instagram and YouTube. I have not created any other looks with this palette recently, but I have reached for a couple times just on an everyday basis. So this one is my little candy cane inspired look and I just think it is so cute. I absolutely loved how it came out. It turned out even better than I expected. It might not be the best candy cane look, but I was super proud of how it came out. I thought it was super cute, so definitely my favorite look with this palette, but I will need to reach into this some more and create some more variety of looks. So that will conclude this video. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know what your guys' favorite look was from this video, and if you didn't check out part 1, I will have that linked for you all in case you are interested in watching that one as well. Give this video a thumbs up if you did enjoy. Let me know what else you would like to see from me, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future uploads. And with all of that said, I will see you in my next video. Bye!